19-year-old.
Modernism was
very glad to be in Los Angeles right now as an art maker, as an artist.
Jonathan, one of the things when I think back to when we were in school, one of the things there are two things I remember from school.
Do you want to hear this?
Jonathan. Actually, there are a number of things, like a few other things like that. But the two main things I remember from school was that you sketched all the time, and also that you always had the coolest taste in music.
Right.
Even if you did at one point listen to Howard Jones, I'm thinking about
listen, come on. If we're talking Howard Jones, we can get some really incriminating photographs of kids. I think somebody set fire to your hair.
I'm more myself in on that one.
I think somebody set fire to your hair once, actually, didn't they? Something bizarrely,
Well, one of the things that just sitting here in your studio as well, I'm just thinking one of the things I find interesting to talk to people about in their studios is how what place music has within their practice when they're actually kind of working. What place does it have for you?
Oh, it's a huge influence. It's as influential to us as visual art, really.
Yeah.
And we've always got music on. I can't imagine just sitting in silence. Really, I always need music. And a lot of characters we do have got musical influences to them. And one of the connections that we made, and one of the reasons we ended up in Selfridges, was we'd been playing a lot of The Fall one day, and we both love The Fall. We've both loved The Fall since the 80s. And Louise had just put, I might make a felt Marky Smith, because Marky Smith looks like he's made of material, he's been scrunched up. He'd be amazing. And then she said, I might make a bricksmith as well. And this just went on Twitter just as a comment while we were working. And then the next thing you know, there's a comment from Bricksmith, who was, Marky Smith's wife, and she was in The Fall when they were at their best. And she said, that'd be amazing, I'd love to see that. And Louise just said, have you seen what I do in Central Link? And then the next thing, there's a phone call from
I need to speak to you, can you give me a call? And so it was just like that really weird sort of section. And I think that then led on to a lot of other stuff. I think it was a key point.
Yeah, we did the windows for the Start boutique, which is Bricksmith's Start shop in London, for the London Fashion Week. In the February, and that was seen by somebody who was procuring stuff for Selfridges, and we were in Selfridges by the following October. But that that was through music. If we hadn't been listening to The Fall that day, if Louise hadn't tweeted about The Fall,
it was quite weird not to be like a bit fangirl about the whole thing, because it's it's really weird now, because there's a connection. I've got a connection to The Fall now. It's like we were talking about the other day, going, oh my god, we've got a connection now. It's like really, it's
that's
weird.
Part of our story now.
If you'd have said that to us years ago, and then it would have been crazy. But music is But as I was saying earlier, is Jonathan can't have anything that's too dancey if he's got a deadline, because he just gets up and dances all the time and doesn't get enough work done.
No, we have to have scheduled dance
So we
breaks.
actually have scheduled dance breaks now, where we would just put something on, and normally either the bin men or the bus passing normally catches us just as we're mid
shape.
But it's strange, but
it's I just always need new stuff. I always need new music. I'm always buying music. I'm always listening to new stuff, and it's the same visually as well. I'll scour websites I found and things like that. I like seeing a lot of new stuff. So I suppose it's if you're only influenced by a small amount of things, that's going to influence you too much, or you either look at nothing or you look at everything. And I think.
Do you play an instrument?
I play a guitar,
I was going to say, I think
and in the early days when I first had a computer in the 90s, when everything took forever to save, I'd have my guitar and I'd press save, and then I'd pick the guitar up and play it, whereas now everything's a lot quicker. I don't get the chance to.
No dial-up.
No, but I do see, and sometimes I like sometimes I like to see like the bones of work as well, how drawings are constructed, and I like things which are fairly simple. And I also like hearing that in music as well. I know certain records, I think, like old 60s recordings when you can turn the stereo to one side and just hear the bass or the drums.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very visual thing for me as well. I can see that in drawings. So sometimes I'll approach a drawing in the way I think of.
Yeah, because I know you always, when you were talking about going back to your line, I can remember when Jonathan looks at drawings, I mean, and sometimes, and he's like, oh, this is rubbish, and I'm like, oh, it looks great, and you went, no, because it's too, it needs to be,
Yeah,
and
so I see the sound.
Jonathan makes a sound.
The
like,
line is a
yeah,
noise.
and he says it's too, and he makes this sound, and it needs to be.
And I'm reading a
really
book
weird.
on David Bowie at the moment.
Yeah.
And there's a bit in there about the recording of Ziggy Stardust, and he said he was drawing the shapes of the guitar solos for Mick Ronson. He said this is the shape, so he said he'd get a felted pen and he'd draw a shape, and then Mick Ronson would then be able to turn that shape into a guitar
noise,
solo.
Yeah.
And I think that's great because
Fantastic.
I sort of see that the other way around.
Yeah. Because I think, well, another interview that I've done with a guy in Las Vegas called Tim Babington, he created a work out of coloured pipes.
Right.
That is Copeland's Fanfare for the Common Man.
Yeah.
And again, it's a sort of it's not directly linked in any scientific way to the notes, but it is kind of what's the word? It's a condition.
Synesthesia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there must be an element of that to think of the sound alignment maker.
Yeah, I think there must be. I don't see sounds as colours, but I see sounds as lines. And sometimes I just like filling a page with a squirrely line that's going places, and it is bass, drums, guitar as well, isn't it? That's how I see things.
Because you often actually sketch bands, don't you?
Yeah, lots.
When you go to see a band, you'll sketch them.
Yeah, I do, and that's something I've started every time I go to a gig now. I have a small sketchbook, and I sketch in the dark, which is an interesting way to draw as well.
Yeah.
That's
So you don't really
weird.
know.
Don't know what you're going to get until.
No, it's like getting old film developed. You don't know what you're going to get till you leave the venue.
Yeah.
But we made bands as well, haven't we? We've got quite a few, bands. In fact, we're about to make another one, but yeah.
How many Felt Mistress pieces have you made in total now? Must be hundreds.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, it's hundreds.
I can't think what it says in the back of the book.
I don't know actually, because we had to compile them all for the book, but I really don't know. I mean,
but that's interesting because the book that we had out in the back, there's a
I
list.
think there's something like 400.
I think around 400.
I mean, that rings a bell, but again, the book is out of date now because it went to print last August, and of course you just don't stop working, and so there's lots of bits that. Everything in the book is old now. I want to put all the new stuff in it.
The Old Testament.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like, oh,
so you need a volume 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know whether they probably should pass out because it started off as being a 200 page, just like a little
softback,
and then it, the editor sort of said we can't edit any, there's too much stuff. We're going to have to make it 400 page, and I think the publisher was like, oh God, that's not what we agreed. But yeah, it's good.
You need to tell Wrexham Library about it as well because they don't.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Norwich. We saw it in Norwich Library.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
I think we need to give the distribution a bit of a kick, actually,
Yeah,
don't
I
we?
do.
Because we've not really done much about promoting it, to be honest. We did a few bits in the beginning, but it's like anything else. Life doesn't stop, does it? Work doesn't stop. So especially if you're self-employed, you've got to try and, like you were saying, keep spinning them plates.
It's like spinning plates.
Yeah. So it's like that one's and then I think we need to actually do that again. But yeah.
How did the book come about?
We were approached by a comics publisher called Blank Slate, who'd done some really interesting books with friends of ours, and we knew the people involved. And Martin Steenton, who started working for Blank Slate, thought it would be a good idea to do an art book as opposed to a graphic novel.
I'd been approached by publishers and they all want me to do a how to make book because because it's sewn and it's automatically craft, and I might spend a week on it, but I could obviously put it in 5 easy steps for anybody that doesn't sew. It's really hard, and I didn't want to do a craft book because I was really fighting with this. I'm not doing this for different reasons. I don't want to do a craft book yet. And so when they approached me, I was like, as long as I don't have to do it, it's not a craft book. I was really quite forward about what we wanted, and it was just great that. And also, my friend Woodrow, who edited the book, he'd done a book
designed it.
On Japanese
called Plastic Culture for Kodansha.
So it's all to do with characters and mascots and designer toys, and so I knew that he understood the subject because he'd worked with me, I mean, we've known each other for a while, and I thought he's going to be sort of respectful of it all and not sort of, I can pretty much trust him, because again, making decisions on what goes in a book is really hard, because everything that's old is you're on to the next thing and you don't really want to put the stuff in, but it is still relevant for people who are wanting to have a look at how you started. So we just sent him 10 CDs full of images and he pretty much did everything, which was great. But again, the trust was there, which might not have been if I was working with somebody that I didn't know. I'd be thinking, what angle are they going to take? And again, he did all the interviews for us, which again was great. So we were just lucky to have him on board, really. But that was I said to the guys at the publishing house, I've got this friend, and if you can get him, if he agrees to work with you on it, I'll do it. And he did, and that was great. So
and we didn't have to worry about anything. We knew we trusted him.
Yeah, so it was really easy.
Where do you see the Felt Mistress stuff going now? Because it is a fairly kind of unique and unusual.
After seeing, neither of us animate, so we saw some animated for the ads we did for Sweden, and just seeing it all move, and that it's just so. We want to do some more animation with it, definitely.
We've had a couple of people. We've had some inquiries from film companies and animation companies. So I think that would be the next thing we'd like to do, really.
I think just having some of the characters that some of the strong characters that we love, they've made, they exist, they sell, and then that's pretty much it. I think it would be quite nice to give them a slightly longer life, especially after we were doing like the guy that we did for the film. He's gone on and he's had adventures. It would be quite nice to do something like that, whether it's with, children's books or whatever, to have a bit more development with characters, with well-loved characters that we've got. Because at the moment they're a little bit, we produce them and then they're gone, and and it's quite sad, really, because there's an awful lot of work that goes into them, and then so that type of thing, really. But
and just scale as well, because the stuff we're working on now for an exhibition at the end of the year, we will be making stuff that's like
12 foot. I don't want. This is just a special project that we've been able to work on, and they've given us free rein to do what we want. And so because the scale of the building that it's going to be in is huge, we can go to town on it. So we are building bigger, but I don't want to keep doing bigger.
No, but it's
well,
nice
I will. Yeah, obviously if the sets, but it's very.
But the first things you made were like perhaps a foot tall, foot and a half.
There is a joke that I just keep getting bigger and bigger. Everybody just keeps saying how big, and they're almost full size, really. But these 12 feet one, I think that's going to be.
Yeah, that's probably the limit.
12 foot didn't sound that much to me. I was thinking, we'll do them about 12 foot, and then I think it was my dad pointed out that our ceiling is about 7 foot in a house, 7'6". So it's like, that's quite big, isn't it? So
And what is this character, the 12?
Well, he's going to be Jonathan drew these guys in his book called Huggers, which sort of I'll let you explain it, really, because you're better than.
That was another instance where it was one drawing overlapping another, and it was just like a person, and this huge thing just wrapped around him like a hugger, and I'd written on it, caution, huggers operate in this area. So it was when Louise saw this, she said, it'd be so good to make these huggers and have them there so you can
interact with the characters, so you can feel as though this big thing is holding you and gripping you, because I think with doing stuff in the fabric that in the medium that I use, people want to touch, don't they? They're very tactile, and of course they get told off because they're not really supposed to, so I wanted to do something where people could actually interact with it, so they could get hold of his arms and he would wrap them around him and hug him, so he's a type of hugger, which which we're working with the Millennium Centre in Cardiff, and so we're trying to do. We visited Japan on a residency a couple of years ago, and we went. Part of that was staying up a mountain in a little farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. And on the drive up to there, we were really shocked at how similar it was to the Welsh landscape. because obviously we'd been to Tokyo previously, so like, you know, it's a completely different thing, and we were thinking, oh, there's so much, like with the folklore with Japan and the yokai and stuff, and there's similar backgrounds in Wales as well, and especially when we drive further deep into the countryside and into the woodlands. So we're sort of doing a project on similarities between there and, you know, folklore and how there is similar, because Japanese yokai are really, really cool. Well, I think Welsh yokai should be cool as well, so we're sort of like reinventing some of those guys. But yeah, these huggers are basically what you would see at the corner of your eye if you're walking in any of the woodlands or sort of more remote areas of Wales. So yeah.
Do you think the work has a particular resonance in Japan?
Yes, I think so. But obviously, it's the home of character design. When you go there, everything's got a mascot and everything's got a character.
Yeah.
And there's just so many things about Japan that we love.
They don't question it as much. I think people tend to have a bit of a problem knowing what to call it. I know I was joking about the piece being stolen from the gallery and the policeman ringing me up and saying, you've had a teddy bear stolen from the gallery, would you do this report? It's like, you know, because that's the closest thing that he could. I mean, it looked nothing like a teddy bear, but that's the only... It was made out of fabric and it had stuffing in it, and like that's the closest he could get. So I think people in this country are a little bit more reluctant, because toys are things that kids have. You know, sewing is something that a grandmother does. So there's lots of like stigmas already. Like, it's quite tricky to sort of, you know, people to just go, just take it for what it is, just don't be thinking, just like enjoy it as a piece. Whereas in Japan it doesn't really come into it, because they're much more open about stuff and about, you know, using different materials and things. So it's a lot easier. And also we went out and about photographing pieces, because we like to take our pieces and photograph them in public spaces, because obviously we feel as though they live in the same, you know, in a world pretty much similar to ours, and they go, you know, to bars drinking, and you go sightseeing and stuff. So we like to take them out, and nobody even batted an eyelid, and if they did, they were very interested in talking to what we do. Whereas you get a lot of strange looks in this country, don't we?
Yeah.
Sort of for that type of thing. Well, especially in smaller places. But
do you find that people, and I'm talking not necessarily general public, but people within the kind of the art and gallery and illustration and, you know, the visual communications world, find it difficult to place the Felt Mistress? Yeah,
definitely. I try not to think about it, to be honest, because I think, well, you know, I can't really see the difference. I'm just using a different material. That's the bottom line, and really. But I do think sometimes, I mean, it's seen as a little bit more throwaway, which, you know. But I do try not to get angry or stressed about that type of thing. And there is a lot of people who do understand it and I do appreciate it. So the others can go to hell, really. So it doesn't really, you know, I don't try. I think it's so, to try and worry about what people are thinking. It's again, you just give up, wouldn't you? But I do think. But
there is no sort of template for which way we're going with it. I think that was a tricky thing, because it wasn't like, well, these people have done this in the past, so we can do this. And if people,
that was kind of underlying my question about where do you go with it? Because
and I think the honest answer is we don't really know.
No.
But it goes back to being like, you know, if it feels right and I want to do it, then we'll do that. We'll do that way. But it always gets a good response when we do exhibitions, and I think partly because if we do a lot, we did Pictoplasma in Berlin, and a character design festival, and you know, we had such great response because amazing character designs, but lots of it was 2D. I mean, there was lots of 3D as well, but lots of it was either carved wood or vinyl or plastic, and so, you know, sewn stuff. I think that and they've always been a great supporter, so that was great, and the public coming in, they didn't question it, they just got it and they just enjoyed it, and you know, and so it has been, we always get a good response when we do shows, but I'm not sure, you know.
And it was weird when we did Selfridges, we had the window and on Oxford Street, and people sending us photographs of children tapping on the glass and waving at the characters, and that was amazing. But inside, it was really interesting as well about how people perceive the work, is that inside they had, in the Wonder Room that year, they'd given it over to play was the theme, so it was like vinyl toys, and they had sort of what else did they have there, like a football table that was made out of Barbies, and,
yeah.
but like for £10,000, and children's cars for
I
£10,000.
wanted to say adult toys, but that's like you can't really
Can't
word
really
it
say
like
it.
that. It's like
No.
words like but adult playthings. That even sounds worse.
No,
but
that sounds
yeah,
worse, yeah.
but you just gotta you get what I mean.
But
so.
they had, 7 glass cabinets with like gold frames, and we originally designed 7 characters to go in these glass boxes, and they put the descriptions behind them, and they were really nicely presented. And there was a table in the middle as well with the smaller characters on. But when they sold out to the glass cabinets, and people were like buying 2 or 3 at a time, which was phenomenal, they were moving them off the table into the glass cabinets. Now, as soon as you put a character in the glass cabinet,
It's sold. Because I think it automatically then
It had a frame
justifies
around
its
it.
price tag, which is weird.
Yeah.
But you've almost got to say to somebody, you can't be touching this and messing with this because it's
Yeah.
taken a long time. So it was quite strange. Really,
But
they were
nothing
selling
sold
off the table
the
unless
table.
it went into a glass
But they
cabinet.
went in the glass cabinet,
and then it was
sold.
selling, like they said, it's been sitting there, and then it would sell the day that it went in. So
Yeah.
it was quite strange, really. So I think the way that you actually present stuff, obviously, is very important.
And the context, I mean, before I was talking about when I saw the work that you guys had done for the Nucleus Gallery in Los Angeles, and it was 4 pieces that were 3 monkeys and the Wicked Witch
Yeah.
of the North.
Is it the West?
West?
West.
Yeah,
I think it's West. Yeah. Gosh.
Anyway, the Wicked Witch.
Yeah.
That's when I looked at the price of it, I thought, wow, these are actually really cheap.
Why didn't you buy one, Kit?
Because they weren't that cheap. Because I just spent the money on the flight ticket to LA. That's right. But yeah, I was actually surprised at and for a number of reasons, not just because of the obvious kind of amount of time and effort that goes into it, but because for me they do work very much as pieces of contemporary art, I think. And I could potentially see them, because you place them in a gallery context as well. I could potentially see them as being, something that could be with thousands potentially. And maybe I should have bought it. It would have been a good investment in a few years' time.
It's funny because I know there's a few people that do sort of use fabrics, and I can, people. Listening to other people who use fabrics talking about what would sell as an art piece and what would sell as what doesn't then represent art, is people saying, I didn't want it to look too finished because it's less likely to look like an art piece. And I just find that's really, I find that a little bit dishonest, because you're producing something because you want it to sell for this much, not because that's how you feel the finished product should look. Whereas I don't really think about how it's going to sell. Perhaps if I thought, if I did them a little bit more unfinished, or use a different medium. I think somebody was talking about, I decided to leave them in calico rather than to go into more of a finished product, to sell the toile, because people were saying it would sell more as an art piece. And I just think, God, I find that, and yet their work may, I think if you were going to be really critical and sort of highbrow about it, you might have thought that's much more of an honest. I find it a dishonest piece, because it's like they've made it to be.
Well, they admitted that it was a contrived authenticity.
Which is
really odd.
Which I find really odd, and I don't want to do that, because I'm not producing them as I'm not thinking. I'm just thinking about what the finished piece should look like, and that's great. And those questions about whether it's art, whether it isn't art, it's very, it's a very confusing question. But I think as soon as you start trying to make work for that reason, that's the wrong reason to be making it. In my eyes, anyway. I find it all. Without sounding all, it should come from the heart. It should come from what you feel is right, and it's finished when you feel it's right, because it's your piece. It's not for anybody else, or
We saw an exhibition in London in, when was it, June, July, of Japanese outsider art, which was incredible. One of the best things I've seen in the last couple of years. And there was a lot of 3D pieces in those as well, wasn't there? And you could see the amount of finish they put into them, but they were doing that because they love that process. And there was somebody who was drawing these shapes, and then he was filling them in with this pen, and then every day he was making a hole in this piece of paper and binding them up with this big pile of work. And I thought, I didn't realise as well how much, sometimes when I'm inking something I think, God, I could use a much bigger brush to ink this, and I'm filling it in with this little pen or something.
It's but to do the process.
But it's the process, and it's the same when Louise is
And I think
sewing.
again with the outsider art, it goes back to living in the middle of Wrexham and having less. I know we're not hardly outsider with being, but you know what I mean. Not having all that sort of input from living somewhere where everybody is telling you, what's fashionable, what isn't fashionable, what you should do. I mean, I can't deny that haven't got access to it because we obviously have with having the internet. But I think that just trying to be having your head a bit clear before you start something is really,
I suppose there's a less immediate pressure for where it's
where it's going to go. But I don't. It's hard. I think that I think sometimes the finish of something sometimes can be its downfall with some pieces, because I just don't understand that process. But I know that I think that sometimes my work's over finished and people don't realise then that it's been handmade, and so then I'm almost doing exactly what Jonathan was worried about with the vector work to his brush line. But I'm just hoping that if I talk about enough to people about how I've produced it.
But my work has been reproduced digitally, and people are only seeing reproductions of it, whereas your work exists as the real thing.
So I think
and when you
can
see
tell,
the real thing, you can see all those tiny hidden stitches.
I can remember making a dress for somebody though, or making a dress and exhibiting it at a show, and somebody walking past and said, "Did you make that?" And I said, "Yeah." And she went, "My God, it looks exactly the same as the ones you get in the shop." It's like, well, what did they think? They were magically existed. Somebody's got to make. I just don't really understand that. What's the concept of that? It's like that. These are made by superhumans.
Yeah.
The ones in the shops are made.
Real human beings. How do you do it?
Yeah.
Or almost like handmade is like a derogatory term.
Yeah,
in that
like as
respect.
if you would expect something handmade to being. I suppose if you went to school and your mum had knitted your jumper and the sleeves were too long on it, and it was a little bit, you'd feel a little bit. There's a big negative aspect of handmade, but it doesn't really mean, I don't know. It's a strange one, but I guess I try not to think about it too much because I think that again it's that bloody mindedness of me of thinking, well, I'm going to do it because I like it. So hope to touch wood. It's worked so far, but
And what are you working on now?
We're working on the project for Christmas for the Millennium Centre, so we've got till the end of next month, so that's like it's huge. I mean, do you know the building? Are you familiar with it?
In Cardiff?
Yeah.
I think I've seen it on TV.
It's
I've been there for
pretty
25
big
years.
building, so it's it's a big installation for opening beginning of December, so that'll be run for a month. So so it's 2D artwork and 3D artwork, and again 3 sort of oversized 8 foot, between 8 and 12 foot pieces, so it's all crazy for that. And
is a lot of the work that you produce commission work?
I'd say about half and half,
yeah,
really.
I mean, a lot of it is, we try to. I mean, there's a few group shows that we get involved with, but that's just you tend to, you can't sort of rely on. You wouldn't be able to make a living by just relying on that. I don't. You need to sort of to do other work as well. But
And I suppose exhibitions are sort of when we do those, we come up with our work ourselves and then try and find a place for it, perhaps, or
but
we're
again,
working towards.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what else is coming up. I was working on it. I am going to work on it. Actually, me screaming, I'm never going to do a making of book. I'm actually going to try, now that we've had the Felt Mistress book out and I've, established myself as, not going to do. I think I may do a more of a some of the methods that I use and more of a practical book rather than an art book. But that's plans for next year, but again it depends on how it goes, because but a little bit more about the techniques I use, because there's not really many books on the subject, as not to that degree anyway. And then just commissions come in, don't they? And private commissions, people wanting versions of themselves that look like our stuff. Yeah.
That's interesting, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
People must, like in online, you can go and generate yourself as a Simpsons character. And
Yeah.
thing. It's always like, what do I look like as a Felt
Yeah.
Mistress character?
Yeah.
The blue skin.
Yeah.
Well, Jonathan does caricatures of people. He's done different events for Foyles in London where he does creaturizations of
Draw people like
yeah.
Felt Mistress characters.
And so you've done that. I mean, really quickly, just, you know, like sitting there for a few minutes and then obviously take note of what you're wearing. So you're not necessarily looking exactly like you, but it's got elements of you and that sort of thing. So a lot of people then want to lead on to the next stage and have it to look like them. And we tend to just, you know, I mean, we did a couple from London, and she had it done as a surprise for her husband for Christmas. He didn't know that he was going to be done, and she sent me all her bits of she sent me his Ray-Ban sunglasses to put on the character and stuff. I don't know whether he was expecting it. He's probably thinking, where have they gone? And you know, and things like that. So, you know, it's nice to incorporate personal items onto the actual piece as well, so that there's some sort of relevance to it. But yeah, but we can't really see much further than Christmas. I think we finally finish. I think we finish on about the 18th of December. Got a few workshops and things that I'm doing in London, and then the 17th of December we collapse for not do anything. Yeah. And then we hope to go to Japan again in the spring. So
it's supposed to be a holiday, but we're all looking.
We're
into
trying
ways
to because I think that we both like work so much that it seems a shame not to go out there and do something. So we may, you know, call on a few friends out there and see if we can get some work out. Do a show.
And it's
or
so
something.
well received in Japan. It's incredible.
So it's like it's a nice thing to do. So we might try and do a show out there, but that's not, you know, that's just, we're supposed to be on holiday. But yeah,
it'll be interesting to see, I think, where it does develop.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting. Like I said, we've got nobody to, like, no role model to look at, really.
Yeah.
I try, like, again, sometimes I wake up at night and think, you know, I'm kidding myself if I think I can make this into a career. This is ridiculous. Like, how am I living? You know, what am I doing? And, you know, how am I doing this? And then you start to stop and think about things. And you think, oh, well, yeah, okay, you know. I get really, you know, especially because of advertising and stuff and people needing puppets and things. And again, there's not a lot, you know, lots of stuff is produced abroad now, so it's quite easy, you know, people wanting something quickly or wanting something done, or they needed something unusual. And, you know, and again, when you look at your work, you don't necessarily think, you know, think other people ring up and just sort of say, oh, you know, we want it to look like one of your designs because you're so unique and whatever. And it's like, you don't really stop to think about anything like that when you're producing it, because you're just doing it because that's what, you know, that's what it looks like. But
well, thank you very much, Jonathan and Louise.
hello to me. I wave my arms around far too much. I apologise for waving my arms around. I've normally got something that, like, something to mess with when I'm having interviews, but
it was also, I mean, it was just great to catch up as well, and kind of,
Pigman, we didn't even
we didn't talk about Pigman.
Jonathan's not aware of Pigman. Is it a Bradley thing, do you think?
It might have been a Bradley thing,
because it was down the woods.
To live down
Jackie Barrett's.
Well, no, I think it was down
the Batters.
You know you know when you're walking up to the school gates and you look right, and there's a laneway that goes. It was called the Urder, I think.
I think the little tiny
Pigman apparently lived there. I mean, it was about 200-metre pathway, and I don't know where a half man, half pig was meant to have resided unnoticed.
Because I was thinking, do you remember when Jackie Barrett? You know, obviously because you lived back Don. So do you remember Jackie Barrett?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Because he was a bit like he'd chase you if
and
I remember somebody telling me that he had a monkey that would chase you that was rabid, and it's just like I've never seen. Because the thing is, my parents have lived in Bradley all their life, and my dad thought it was hilarious because he was chased by Jackie Barrett for being on the land when he was younger, you know, like you knew Jackie Barrett's dad or whatever, so they'd owned the farm for so long, but I had memories that he was down there, but perhaps there's more than one Pigman. He's probably breeding. There's probably a pig woman somewhere that's
There's a Seinfeld episode about the Pigman, isn't there, in the hospital? So obviously
yes.
Right. So he's not...
Every country's got their Pigman. Every urban conurbation.
I'm just waiting now for Felt Mistress.
We need
Pigman
to actually make a Pigman, shouldn't we? Really, because he's, you know, he goes down in Welsh folklore.
Yeah, the Pigman.
That's Pigman. Yeah, when you mentioned it, I forgot all about Pigman. I think I talked to you about it, but I think I was getting mixed up with Jackie Barrett and his rabid monkey.
I didn't know about the rabbit monkey.
Yeah, I don't know why. He must have had something with him, and when somebody was chasing him, going, oh, he had a monkey on his shoulder, he was chasing us with a gun. It's like, I wasn't allowed to go down there, really. My mum and dad, I was forbid, probably because there would have been a flasher or something. Well, no, I think it was a bit lonely, and there was obviously people flashing or things, and I think perhaps, when I was on my own, my mum was like, oh, no, don't go down there on your own, and of course we did, and I'd have to lie and say we'd not been down there, but I suppose she probably thought I was going to get murdered if we went down there, but...
It's funny though, because I'm just thinking like what you're doing now is still kind of a similar kind of imagination of what kids have.
Yeah.
About things like pig, which in hindsight is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And we were convinced, half man, half pig.
Pig,
lived in this.
It's really funny because we always do people like smoking or or like they're smoking pipes or whatever, and I don't want to design for children, partly because you don't want people to think that they can give them to a child because they've got wire in them anyway, and so I never wanted to get down that route because it's such a different way of working.
Yeah.
And so we've never really designed for children, but we don't we never do anything that's sweary or controversial anyway, so there's nothing wrong with it. But the amount of kids that took our book in, on book day or when they had to do show and tell, the amount of kids that they've said, oh, my daughter really loves your work, and they sit there for ages going through every page. But I think somebody said to me it looks like a catalogue, looks like a toy catalogue because there's like so many pictures in it or whatever. And I think that perhaps like when you're kids, you sit with the Argos catalogue or the at the back page going through all the toys and stuff.
Yeah.
It's something about like not lists, but or you'd have a poster with like I had one with all the different breeds of dogs on, or like you said, all the superheroes or whatever. And I think having things in mass, I suppose it must be
like
something.
A collecting of,
and like sticker albums, So I suppose it must be something about the book that attracts kids to it because we
always say this about when we've got stuff en masse about how much that appeals to people as well.
Yeah.
We've got an exhibition where we take everything we've made for that exhibition and we photograph them all together in a studio somewhere, and they always get a big reaction.
They all love that en masse. If you've got like a group. And I remember I did Brooklyn Hipsters for Bergam, and he'd spent some time in Brooklyn. I think he'd spent the summer there, and he had an exhibition called My American Summer, and he'd drawn all these how he draws characters of American, all the hipsters that were hanging around Brooklyn, and they were like a group of, was it 7 or 9? I can't remember.
Like that,
And I think that all lined up. There was something about that collection as opposed to like individual ones that sort of appealed to everybody. Because we took like a really rubbishy picture of them just before I think I sent it for him, and I think I'd left a pen on the side, like it wasn't posed as a photograph, and it just went on the internet because everybody just posted it on stuff, and so every now and again you keep seeing our wallpaper and that pen on the side was like really really sort of like blurred image that I'd put up that time. That's nothing safe on the internet.
So thanks very much, Louise, for talking to me today, and Jonathan
coming.
for talking to me today, and best of luck with Felt Mistress works and creatures in the future.
Thank you very much. Our pleasure.
Yeah, nice to see you again. You haven't aged at all.
Oh, would you?